Hi, this is Conor McMahon here, and welcome to our next episode of Real Horror Show.
Somewhat delayed episode of Real Horror Show.
It's been a while.
We're back. We're back, and that's all that matters.
Apologies for the interruption. Regular service will resume.
So we're going to do a kind of a quick episode today, and what are we going to be talking about today, do you think?
I guess we don't have any major topic, but it's kind of what are the horror films we've been watching over the last couple of months or weeks.
We're getting, I know. We've had a time to build up a bit of a repertoire of things to talk about.
Yeah.
Anywhere you want to start, or?
Well, I mean, just because it's in my head, I watched Green Room again last night.
Oh, yeah, brilliant.
So here's the thing, okay? Green Room. Horror film or not, I, like, without getting into that crazy, but because I love it as a horror film, and I've had a few people kind of go against me about that.
I mean, to me, it's got all. I mean, trapped in a room, one location,
Incredibly intense,
violence,
frightening,
scary. I mean, it's got all the tropes of a horror movie.
A little bit of gore.
Yeah, a little bit of gore, a lot of gore. That arm when it comes in through the door is one of the most horrifying things I've seen in cinema in so long.
Yeah.
But it's a funny one because, you know, I just see people, you kind of get caught up in that fight over and over again about what is or isn't a horror film. For me, that's what I think, Connor, you're dead right. It gives you that feeling of it, that intensity, that fright and stuff. It's not really, you know, people say if it's not supernatural, it's not horror. I think that's nonsense. I think you'd end up eliminating so many kind of horror films because of that. Like, and it is a genuinely frightening film.
And it's a really simple story as well. It's not like, you know, it doesn't try to say it's like a psychological kind of thriller or anything like that. It's just designed.
It's so bare bones. Actually, Connor, why don't you give us the
well, my first question was, if people saying it's not a horror, what are they saying it is?
Thriller.
Thriller, okay.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I understand, but actually I think more for me what makes a horror film is what's its intention. Yeah. And I think its intention is, well, it's to thrill, but it's intense and to scare, really. I don't think Green Room is designed just to excite you. I think it's meant to disturb you and scare you. And so therefore, that's what makes it a horror. And actually, because there's a couple of films we're going to talk about later on where I would debate whether it's a horror film or not, because for me, that's it. It's the intention. Are you trying to frighten me?
Yeah.
You know, or not. Because supernatural elements don't mean it's going to be scary either.
Yeah, I mean, what I think is they've taken the elements that might normally be supernatural and they've just replaced them with, you know, Nazi punk rock.
But if anything, that's scarier than the supernatural thing, because that's more realistic. And I can say from personal experience, playing in bands, traveling around different places, going on the road, playing music, that's exactly what it's like.
He's seen some things. He's seen things.
But I get what they're going for in that, you know, you're playing in these somewhat kind of dodgy, kind of rundown places, and you get these kind of people who are, it's almost like they're holding you hostage kind of thing. And it's like that very real thing that you get from bands. And the director, he used to be in punk bands, so it feels from personal experience. So, but then it's that like heightened like times.
Yeah, but for anyone who hasn't seen it, okay, so like the whole idea is just it's a punk band, like a true punk band who have literally no money, nothing to their name, traveling around. A gig gets cancelled. They get offered another one basically in this kind of somewhat dodgy, what turns out to be a Nazi kind of bar. It is a Nazi bar. And they go down there and they end up seeing something they shouldn't do, and they end up stuck in the green room basically. And the whole film kind of is as simple as that, and it revolves on them just trying to get out. But it is just... It's incredible.
Just, the things that I think are brilliant about it is, and it really pulls out the heart, is the realism. Like there's a scene, and they're just little details, like the scene where one of the guys is holding a gun, and you can kind of see his hand is getting tired, and he has to use like two hands to hold the gun.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's something about just the reality of the situation, or the, again, when his hand gets sliced or his arm gets sliced.
Yeah.
And it's something you don't see. And even I was watching with my housemate last night, and he even pointed, I mean, I probably should have picked up on it, but like, he's also the guitar player.
Right, okay.
And
that's his bread and butter, yeah.
That's his whole life
horrible,
changed.
yeah,
It's not just his arm. And I mean, as well, I was going to say coincidentally, but maybe not, the lead singer gets his throat ripped out by the dog.
That's an interesting point. Actually, I want to watch back now and just watch it from that point of view.
That's really clever, yeah. Yeah. And they do kind of use things from bands in order to help tell the story. Like, even, you know, the way when he uses all the feedback to
the dogs.
Yeah, to beat the dogs and that sort of stuff. Like, you know, so they kind of use that stuff to their advantage. I thought
Does, like, it kind of reminds you though, like, of it, like, it's, for me, it's the Assault on Precinct 13 of our times.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it is just, it's so pared back and so simple, and everything is just so precise, and there's no fat on the bones. It is just pure.
I was listening to an interview with the director, and he was saying that, you know, when he was coming up with the film, people were saying to him, oh, there's a bit of an Assault on Precinct 13 vibe off this, and he was like, I've never seen that film. So he said,
shame on you, Jeremy.
He was like, I'm not going to watch it until I at least finish the script, because I don't want to, feel like I'm copying too much or anything like that. And he said when he finished his like first draft of the script, or maybe when he finished his when he finished the film, he watched it and he was like, oh my god, this is like the best thing ever. This is exactly what I'm going for. Kind of like almost like it's like a Western. Except in modern times.
I mean, the other thing I really liked about it as well was the way they set up things that you normally might see in the films. Like, there's the vents and then there's the car that they're kind of going, does anyone know how to hotwire a car? And they're all like, no.
Yeah.
Or it's like, you see vents and it's like, well, we wouldn't fit through there.
It points out how vulnerable you really are, doesn't it? Because it's like, there's the whole idea we all love to give out the macho thing of, if I was in that situation, I'd do this, that, or the other. And it's just like, it's actually, no, it's not quite that simple. And like that reality that they're actually stuck in the green room, they're allowed to leave the green room at any time, but they choose not to because they don't know who's on the other side of the door. Yeah. Like it's that fear and not knowing. Like, I just can't imagine it.
Yeah. And you see one of the guys kind of crack and he's like, I'm just going to run. And it's kind of like, that might mean death, but it's just...
But the idea of staying there seems insane as well. Because we've all seen Night of the Living Dead. Like, locking yourself isn't necessarily the best idea either. Like...
yeah, and I think it's one of those great things where it just has the perfect dilemma. So as an audience member, you're watching it going, they can't fucking leave the room. But then from Patrick Stewart's perspective, you're going, he can't let them leave. It's this really brilliant conflict that the main characters, that the band are aware of. They know, shit, if we leave this room, we're dead. And Patrick Stewart knows, if I let them leave, I have to kill them. Like,
and he puts in an incredible performance as well. I think, like, pre-Logan, this is the darkest Patrick Stewart we've ever seen.
And apparently, another tidbit on that was when he got the script, Patrick Stewart, he was reading it in his home. He said he got about halfway through it, and then suddenly had the shit scared out of him. He turned on all the lights, the perimeter lights of his house, locked all the doors and windows, poured himself a glass of scotch, and then finished reading the script. Because I imagine it's as intense on the page.
I'd love to read that script actually, because it's even like, you don't need a major explanation about who the Red Laces are. Like, it just becomes quite apparent, and it's just beautifully written that we don't need to, have the history of how did Nazis come about? Why are they Nazis? They just are. And you're in trouble. There's something so pure and simple about that. And like, for me, what I love a film that has that kind of intensity, I feel it finishes on a perfect note for the type of film that it is. And I just love it when a film holds its own to the end and doesn't kind of buckle out in the last. Because the last 20 minutes, particularly of films, people can seem to lose their nerve of following it through. And no, I really like the way they went with it.
Cool. What else?
Next film.
Oh. Well, yeah, I think there's definitely a couple of 2016 films that we want to talk about. Or should we talk about Get Out first, even because it's more modern and current? Because who knows if these people listen to the end of our podcasts?
Sure. Yeah, you people.
We know who you are. So have we all three of us seen Get Out?
We have.
Yeah.
So, thoughts? Or synopsis, first of all. Someone.
I'm always terrified of the synopsis.
Right, so I'll give it a crack. So basically, it's a film directed by Jordan Peele of Key and Peele, and it's about a young interracial couple, a black guy and a white girl, and they go to the girl's parents' house to visit the parents for the first time after like 4 months of dating. And there's a bit of anticipation that, there might be problems because they're an interracial couple, but she assures them everything will be fine. They get to the parents' house and things are very unusual. It's very creepy, and they're met with a kind of weird hostility from the family, and it's a mystery, and things spiral from there, I suppose, is more or less.
I think because it's one of those ones you don't really...
You don't want to give anything
I feel
away.
For some of the films actually today, and actually in general, like, you almost want to do a separate spoiler special to be able to actually get in, especially when we talk about the Wailing later on, because you kind of want to talk about incidents in it. But
but I think as well, it has, just from people I've talked to, everyone I've talked to, it seems like a film that a lot of people have seen. So like, I mean, I'm not intending on doing spoilers here, but I wouldn't be surprised if most people who are listening to this have actually seen it by this stage.
Yeah, it really hit, like, it's massive. One of those films that broke out, and I think it played really well to both audiences, horror fans and just regular people. Like,
I think the promotion it gets from this podcast though could kind of push it up.
That's it, Jordan. You're welcome. But no, you see, because here's the thing: is like, and I remember because we've talked briefly about this before. I want to preface this with, like, I really like Get Out. I thought it was a great film. I think the satire is on point. I think it's incredibly intelligent. My only qualm with it is I'm not sure it's a great horror film. And I don't think it really is that worried about it. I think it's using that kind of world. I think it's an amazing Black Mirror episode. You know, pushing this out there, and I've seen the thing saying, like, you know, one of the greatest horror films of modern times. So I think one of the best and most important satires, but is it a great horror film?
Like, I mean, I think for me, coming to see Get Out, I was like looking forward to this film for like the 6 months that I knew about it before it came out. You know, a big fan of Jordan Peele and that. And while I really did like it, it wasn't even until actually afterwards when you said it, you were like, didn't really see it as much of a horror film. You kind of made me realize, actually, yeah, you know, it wasn't the scariest. It felt like much more of a mystery and a satire to me, but I still loved it. I still did really like it. What about you, Connor?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, for me, I wouldn't like it as much as the hype would say. Like, it's like you say,
right,
it's like one of the great films. And the films, I suppose, even it would reference like something like Rosemary's Baby. And Rosemary's Baby is clearly a classic. Like, you know,
a classic and also a genuinely scary film in parts.
Yeah.
Like,
and I mean, I suppose what Get Out had as well, and which I did think it do well, was the mix of humor with scares, because it is one of those things that's hard to balance sometimes in movies. And like Scream did it really well back in the day, where it was genuinely really funny, and it was also quite scary at times. I mean, sometimes it didn't quite all add up to me as well. Like, I mean, you know, like when he comes outside and the guy
running towards him,
and it's like it is a scary moment, but I'm still like, why was that guy doing it? It's like,
totally. And even the ending, I did think that there were a couple of unanswered things at the end. Like, I mean, even the guy Dre, I think, you know, the first guy who goes missing, who, you know, he takes the photograph of and he's like, get out of here. I believe those were his words. But like, it kind of doesn't really answer like what's going to happen to him or anything like that. Do they just kind of leave, you know, at the end?
Yeah, it's a funny, because again, I know we're not kind of quite getting into exact details, but what like the ending for me is incredible simply because it reveals our own kind of understanding of the world by just the sound of a police siren. Regardless of what happens, our reaction is very informed by what we think is going to happen, and that actually tells us a lot about how we believe the world works and how it's going to be portrayed. And I like that without actually having to show it. It reveals our kind of thing. And I think the whole film does that really well, and in quite an uncomfortable way, because, you know, we're three white guys sitting here talking about it, and like the whole film basically just says, you know, like that if you're overly supportive, then you may also be racist, you know. And I think, you know, there's very, very good points in there. The only challenge I'd put to the film is it doesn't offer us any solutions onto how maybe we can counter that or change it. It's more a statement of how things are as opposed to how to avoid being this way.
Yeah, and I suppose, I mean, I listened to an interview with Jordan, and that was one of the things he was saying, is that because we live in a time where there's a perception that we've gotten over all that and that we're not in a racist society. And I guess he's kind of going, no, I mean, they use that word post-race. Is that
post-race? Oh, I wouldn't be surprised.
But it's just kind of feeling that we're all past that. But actually the experience of, and I mean, I thought even the opening scene was great, just to show, you know, a black guy walking through a rich white neighborhood and how unnerving that can be.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. Like, I mean, and even just as a horror, like one of the things that at first when I saw it, I quite liked about it was that I think there's probably about 5 references to The Shining in the film. I'm not saying that, you know, references to a horror film make it a good film, but, you know, The Shining is one of my favorite films. Then the more I thought about it, I was like, okay, reference The Shining, fair enough, but why The Shining? You know, like, what does The Shining as a film have to do with that as a film? Would it not make more sense to reference like Rosemary's Baby, or to reference like
well, Stepford Wives. Like, let's face it, it's basically Stepford Wives.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah. So I was kind of thinking, was that just a little bit of a kind of cheap, like,
I think he's just a horror fan. I mean, he is a horror fan.
And a very intelligent one as well. Yeah. But like, I think there's the danger of like, there's loads of references in there, and there's loads to enjoy if you're looking for it. Yeah. But I want to have I want the film just to work on its own right, and not to just get pleasure, because a lot.
But if there are references, they should technically be relevant to the plot of that film, or to the style of that film. You know what I mean? Rather than just, oh, hey, I love The Shining as well, here's some references, you know, because when I really broke it down, that's kind of what it said to me.
It's funny, because like Get Out is actually, like, I do think It's a really well made film. It feels unfair. Like I think the reason we're putting the criticisms out there against it is actually more because it's been hyped up to be this masterpiece of all proportion, as opposed to like, so it's a great film. It's just maybe not quite that. And actually, just going beyond Get Out, actually, because I don't want to label that one, but a lot of films are nowadays overdoing that trend of it's just nothing but nods and winks to other horror films, as if somehow we're coasting on just people enjoying getting little Easter eggs throughout the film, as opposed to just making a straight up film, you know, because it's kind of hard to make any horror film nowadays that won't inadvertently or whatever, I can't remember that word, like reference other horror films. Like it's just, if I said it in the woods, if I said it in a house, if
people
there's
are
a
going to
ghost,
draw comparisons.
yeah, you can't not. And it just, people are doing too much. Like, did you notice that bit? There's this, or like, you know, I kind of think you should be busy worrying about making your own film as opposed to deliberately just giving nods.
I mean, the thing I did as well, which I really liked, was, you know, the hypnosis element and where the guy gets kind of lost.
Beautifully visually done.
Yeah, and I mean, it did have enough of, definitely of its own originality.
Absolutely.
100%. And that was the best parts.
Yeah.
Actually, I remember, because I was talking to you guys as well, that like I'm bloody disgusting. I think they were sharing some of the things, because in the trailers there were a few scares that were left out of the final film. And I do feel there was a scarier version of this film that had a couple more jump scares and everything, and they pulled back in it. Now, I'm not sure whether that was because they felt the message just didn't need it, and that's quite possibly true. I guess maybe to
reach a wider audience, maybe
possibly, because I saw the film. It was a surprise. Actually, I can't even talk today. Surprise screening a week before it came out, and what I was amazed with, it was packed with people who didn't know what the film was going to be.
Okay.
And I don't even know I think they knew it was going to be a horror film, but like this audience looked like a very general mix from 20 up to like 50s, and they responded really well to it. And they did jump and squeal. So like maybe it's an element of, we've seen so many horror films and actually are overly comfortable with things. Like, I think maybe for the mainstream audience, there is still enough kind of spooks and scares to actually work.
I mean, to be like, it's a long time since I saw an audience walk out of film so pleased. Like, you could feel the buzz of everyone talking about what they just seen.
Well, that was it for me in particular. One of the best things about going to see that film was I went to see it on the day it came out. It was on Paddy's Day, and I went to see it. The cinema was packed, and as you're watching it, because it's such a mystery, you know, as it unfolds, you could just feel the entire cinema just going, "What the hell is going on?" You know, and just like hanging on the edge of their seat to find out what happens next. And then, of course, you know, when there are kind of like crazy moments or funny moments, there's just such a big reaction from it. So definitely, like, seriously pleased the crowds, like it really did.
Yeah. Okay,
Right.
so thumbs up in general,
up.
I think, for,
Thumbs
you know,
up.
Absolutely.
massive hit. And actually kind of interesting because it's from Blumhouse, which is a very brave kind of move for them, considering that some of the kind of criticism labeled towards them recently has been on the more generic, say, your Annabelles and your Ouija.
Right.
And recently then with Ouija 2, or the prequel, Ouija Origin of Evil, like they've really kind of brought that back to a much higher quality. So it does seem like they're kind of recalibrating again and actually bringing it back to what they did really good in the first place. It's actually really interesting and good and strong horror. So that's a positive sign.
I mean, for them, I mean, they had Split and Get Out this year, which were massive hits.
Split was beyond massive. And like, you know, again, I'm not a massive fan of it, but like, I think anything that's a great success for the horror genre is a good thing, you know?
It just goes to show that people want to see horror movies in cinemas, and there should be more of them.
They do. I saw there was a great, actually, I must share it online. We should share it on the Facebook page. There's a great 40-minute chat with Jason Blum about his whole model on the horror thing. He talks really frankly. It's with a financial kind of sort of a TED Talk type thing. So he's very open and honest about figures and everything. And he was saying that horror is one of the few things that stands up in cinema today. That I think it's, for most films, like kind of 76% of its revenue will come from like afterwards, so the DVDs, video on demand, Blu-rays and everything like that, and 25% in the cinema. With horror, it's still 76% cinema. People want to go and see horror films. It's a group thing. It is.
It. And also, you don't even necessarily need to know that much about the horror film. You just need to see the poster on the bus and go, "Oh, that looks like some sort of horror film.
Yeah.
Let's all go to the horror film."
Yeah.
You know, like, and me and you, Mark, both worked in X Division over the years, and when I worked there, it was what good horrors have you got? It was always, you know, I ended up making a new release horror section, like just a wall of horrors, and it was all, you know, at the time I worked there, it was all full of like Saw 3 and 4 and like Hostel 2 and all that stuff. But like, I mean, every now and again, you know, you get something like Paranormal Activity or Insidious that would come out, like, and people just wanted to see it. They just, if they were getting two films, one of them would have to be a horror, like.
It's amazing because, like, for horror films, and I think I know I can be the same as well. Like, for all the amount of times, and in X Vision as well, when you rent things, people come back saying that was crap, that was really crap, and everything. And yet, you know what they do? Rent another one. Like, it's a really weird thing, because I'd say the majority of films we end up watching in this genre aren't particularly great films, and yet you still hold out that hope for that film, that trick. And actually, we've got a few of them here that we're going to be talking about today that actually kind of reminds you that, you know, it is still possible, because you start to wonder, am I just beyond it? Can I not be scared anymore? Can I not be spooked? And as a perfect segue to that, Conor McMahon, I'd like to ask you about Under the Shadow.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Scary?
I found it terrifying. You know, well, it had, I mean, thought it had some brilliant jump scares. Like, I mean, I know sometimes that's a dirty word.
I still haven't seen this.
Yeah, so go on, synopsis. Or do you want me to try and give a basic introduction to that for you? Here, I'll introduce you, and then you tell me what you like it.
But I haven't seen it.
So I should just do my bad synopsis.
Under the Shadow is a 2016 horror film, but it's available now on Netflix in the UK and Ireland for anyone out there who's looking. It was written and directed by Babak let me check this. Anvarai.
It was written by Babadook.
And it was set in Tehran during the War of the Cities, where Saddam Hussein basically shelled the hell out of the Iranian cities as part of the Iran-Iraq War. And it's about a family, a father who works in the army, who's actually has to go off and fight, and the mother who was she trained to be a surgeon, or she was a medical profession, but you know, but basically, I don't think she was allowed to progress because of her gender. Was part of the issue, and it's basically her left at home to mind the kid, and it kind of basically a bomb hits the building up in the roof, and there's this implication that this shelling and this violence and the destruction with the shell may have allowed something into the apartment, which is the jinn, you know, an evil spirit, and so Conor.
Yeah, like, I mean, I watched the film a couple of months ago, so
yeah, I'm a little
pulling back my memory. I mean, I guess, I mean, one of the things people have said about the film is that if it wasn't an Iranian film, it might not get the attention that, I mean, a lot of the stuff is standard stuff you might see in a horror film, but there is something kind of still wonderful about, you know, Senior One exercising to the Jane Fonda video.
Yeah,
and
because of course exercise videos are banned, so there's the whole point that this is one of her secret things that she has to hide is an American videotape.
And you know, it's kind of like, as well, it's one of those things, you know, where people always say they want something the same but different, and I think it does deliver on that, because you just get, everything is just slightly, you know, there's, I don't know if you've given much away, but you know, there's a bit with it's like a kind of a haunted burqa, for want of a better word.
It's the chador, actually. Yeah, it's the full scarf that the women in Iran wear, so it's a full body scarf as opposed to kind of a burqa one. But yeah, it takes its own, like it's a form of its own, and it moves.
Yeah. It's also one of these things, probably a little like Get Out, where it's really nice to see, do you know, when people mix, say, your standard horror film, but with genuine, like there's a bit, for example, where she's afraid to leave the house without putting the burqa on, and I know that's mixed in with a kind of suspense sequence. So it's one of these things where, or she gets beaten up.
You see, and there's that wonderful, because like it's something I guess is harder, say, in horror films nowadays, to try and explain why someone would be afraid to leave the house. But yeah, it's the fact that if she leaves the house, if you just run outside the door, you can actually be beaten and attacked or arrested, because you have, it's considered depraved. You're not allowed to reveal yourself without being covered. And so actually she's as restrained and controlled by the outside government as well as she is by the creatures inside. And there's a slight kind of implication about which is worse to have to face. But yeah, no, it's a really fun, because I know what you mean by that. Like, and obviously the fact that it's in Iran and its context definitely adds something to it. And I suppose you could say the same about J-horror. You know, that it was just interesting to see a different culture. Yeah. I still think Under the Shadow is what I used to love about horror films. When we go back to, even, because we'll talk about The Fog in a bit as well, like those kind of classic ghost stories. This film takes about half an hour, 40 minutes to actually kind of get going. It sets up the family. It takes its time. It's not afraid of that. And it slowly builds. But then when the scares come, they are properly executed. They're genuinely scary. So, because like nowadays everyone loves to say like, I fucking hate jump scares, because they're terribly executed in modern films. This film has a couple of jump scares, but you know what? They're brilliantly executed. And I'm rewatching The Fog or Halloween and everything. I realized films I love have always had jump scares, but they've been justified and well done, and they weren't just totally random. You know what I mean? They don't break the rules of how can something appear behind you or anything like that. Or
a loud sound effect.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the one that annoys everybody.
Because there are a few scenes in this that will make you jump. And like I've seen thousands of horror films, and like I know, Conor, you mentioned this when we talked about before, a scene with At the Window.
Yes.
Genuinely, like you know, that's properly like whoa. Yeah. And it's really exciting to still be able to have that feeling, you know. So Connor, you haven't seen it yet?
No, but the way you're talking about it, I really want to see it. I actually
Really,
yeah.
it just, it's so, you get so kind of comfortable with horror films that when you put them on, you're kind of just looking forward to seeing what the story is.
Yeah,
and you're not
yeah.
really expecting to be afraid. And that's what kind of caught me off guard with this one, because I just didn't expect to be a bit like, oh, I'm uncomfortable with this.
Yeah, my only question with I know I had one little niggle in the film, but maybe you can, because I loved it, but maybe I shouldn't even be bringing this up. But was there something about? I know I was kind of going. Was the plot where she kind of was going to move or leave the house, or
Yeah.
And I was kind of going, why doesn't she just leave the house?
No, yeah, there were one or two moments like that, and actually, because basically her husband keeps calling from the war zone and saying, "Look, go to your grandparents," or that, and she
That's
chooses
it.
not to. And yeah, I think it's at least once and maybe twice in it, and I think it's slightly implied that she feels like she's an independent person and she wants to handle this herself, and she doesn't want to go running off to his mother-in-law or his mother. But I don't think it quite fully justifies it, considering what's going on.
Yeah.
It feels like that
there's
would
a
be the
threat
lesser of two
being
evils.
bombed, like,
Yeah, and they've
like,
already
I do not want to go to my mother-in-law.
Yeah, exactly. And they've been through a couple of nights of shellings as well, forgetting about the spirit.
Yeah.
Like, there's literally a huge danger of the whole building collapse from a bomb hitting it. I agree with you. I think it pushes the realms of plausibility at those points, definitely.
And the people who've made it, have they made any other horror movies?
I don't think so. I think it might be your man's first film.
Really?
Um,
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Because I think it's a weird one, because like it's set in Iran, but I think it's partly UK funded. It was a funny film that way. In fact, was it the UK entry for the Oscars? There's something really strange about it. There's some really weird fact.
Living in the UK.
Yeah, no, I think it was. And it was a really bizarre one that they were entering that one, but definitely one to look out for. I just feel it's someone who, it's not... You know, with horror films, it can be like, I'm a director who's going to make my first big film, and I'm going to do horror because that's an easy one to get into. This, to me, isn't someone aping horror films. This is someone who understands it, enjoys it, and actually wants to make a good one. And genuinely wants those scares to be proper.
Yeah.
And I really, really feel... And I guess because you care about the characters, that's what makes all the difference.
Yeah.
So, Conor Dowling, definitely for your list, and our viewers, if you haven't, it's on Netflix. No excuses. Get on there.
By the next time we meet, I will have seen it, because it sounds really awesome.
Then, Conor Dowling, do you want to talk about The Fog?
Oh, yes. So last
Dun,
night
dun, dun,
I went to the Grindhouse screening in Smithfield every month or so, or every month. At the end of every month, they do a screening of like a classic, like.
And is this film prints? Is it DCPs or is it just a Blu-ray?
Last night it was The Fog on 35mm.
Nice.
Wow.
And a month ago, me and Connor Mack went to see Mortal Kombat on 35mm.
I really feel I missed out with that one, because I have a very big soft spot for that film, regardless of whether it's good or not.
Exactly, yeah. And as on a note on Mortal Kombat, as I was watching it, I was like, I think I've seen this film 50 times. Just put it completely out of my mind, because I'd forgotten about it. And I was like, oh wait, no, I think I know this film.
I was like, how did Christopher Lambert ever become so famous?
He was Raiden. He was clearly Raiden.
I think he was playing an Asian person.
After Highlander, it's the
Mortal
most
Kombat.
perfect role ever for him.
Yeah, and when me and Connor saw Mortal Kombat, every time Christopher Lambert spoke or even came on screen, everyone just cracked up laughing. There's something very strange about him. But The Fog, yeah. So I remember hearing about The Fog when I was a kid, and it kind of had this kind of infamous kind of sound to it. Like, it just sounded like that must be the most terrifying film ever made, because it's called The Fog. And fog is something you see out in the world, and it's one of those naturally kind of creepy, scary things that you just see, So I remember seeing it when I was like 6 or 7 years old, and it was just like terrifying and brilliant and scary, and I don't even remember that much about it. I just remember that I saw it. So I hadn't seen it since then, and obviously since then, big fan of John Carpenter, love all this stuff. But I went to it last night with a friend of mine who'd never seen The Fog before, and it was fucking brilliant. It was really good. It still holds up. Yes, there are some moments, where there's people in the cinema laughing, and where unintentionally, funny moments. And in those Grindhouse screenings, they're usually really rowdy, but this is probably one of the least rowdy ones I've ever been to, because the story is good and it's well directed. Like, the camera,
It's fairly well acted, as far as I remember, though, isn't it? Like, it's not that cheesy.
No, it's not. But I think there were some people kind of watching it, maybe going, really? The Fog is the bad guy, and there's shadowy figures standing in the fog? But like you mentioned on jump scares earlier, there are some brilliant jump scares. One in particular made my friend jump out of his seat when the priest emerges from the shadows of the church. Do you remember that bit? But it's not like, it's one of those jump scares where it's something that's not dangerous. You know, those type of
Yeah.
things where it's like just one
Yeah.
of the side characters going, "Hey, how's it going?" But it's just done so well because he kind of comes out of the shadows towards the camera, and it's brilliant.
It's interesting because a lot of the action scenes in that film were shot afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
they
this and
reshot big
yeah,
chunks, didn't
yeah.
they?
Yeah, because I think John Carpenter said like he did it the first time around, and then he was kind of coming at it with a more heavy-handed approach, like because he was like used to doing slasher movies, but then he realized he was telling a ghost story and that it needed a bit more time and a bit more pacing.
Was it? I thought
No,
it
it's
was
the
too
opposite.
subtle, wasn't
No,
it?
yeah,
Yeah, and he
yeah.
went back to shoot more attacks and
I
go,
saw
no.
him in an interview
I'm
saying
pretty
that very
sure.
thing.
No, because a lot of the reshoots were it
was the kills.
The kills.
Yeah, it was the gore of it.
Saw him on the director's chair with Robert Rodriguez saying that it wasn't until he realized he was telling the ghost story that he realized he had to take his time with it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I've definitely seen the opposite.
The director's commentary, he definitely
Damn.
said that he went back to
Okay.
it. But no, it's interesting. But like, yeah, we must double check that one.
But even on that, like the kills aren't particularly brutal. Like there's that thing where the guy gets stabbed in the
slash
face,
hook.
like at the start. That was pretty harsh.
That really, I just, you know what, like works because the fog still scares me as a film. And okay, so this is about 2 years after Halloween, 3 years maybe. It was Carpenter's next film, right? I'm pretty sure it
don't know.
was.
After which Halloween?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But like it's just
have been.
when the fog is spilling in and the shadows of the sailors just stepping out of it, and because
Yeah.
they're just standing there, there's none
Yeah.
of the running and everything. And again, I just find that so much scarier. They're
Totally.
just standing there with their red glowy eyes,
Yeah.
and or it's spilling under the door and stuff. And this feeling of you can't escape it, like.
It had, for me as well, it had a slightly Spielbergy feel. Just,
Yeah.
even the start where you see all the gas stations, and I think that the
Oh,
lights
yeah.
all click off, or the,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, actually, that's true. It's a wonderful
All the
bit where
car
it kind
lights
of
come on at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's never explained, but somehow it heralds the arrival of it.
Yeah, it's really nice.
And Adrian Barbeau in the lighthouse on the radio station, who couldn't fall in love with her? Like it's just,
It's brilliant.
it's
That was
just
really
wonderful. But yeah, and of course Janet Leigh and Jamie Lee Curtis
Yeah.
on screen together,
Yeah.
mother and daughter. So that no, like, but I really, I think if people haven't watched it in a while, get on there, watch it. It really, really
Here's
stands
the
up.
thing I think about recommending that to people. I think that people would like it if they were seeing it for the first time. But I think it's a film that you need to pay attention to. Like, it's not the type of film you can just sit down and watch on your laptop and be checking your emails in the next
Yeah.
tab. You know what I mean? I think it's a type of film.
No
you sit
film
down
should
with
be.
one or two friends, turn off the lights, turn off your phone, and just get lost in that world. It's only 83 minutes long. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And I just think because it is a more simple type of horror film, than the type of stuff we're used to nowadays, because it does kind of take its time a little bit more at the start and that. But yeah, I think it's really good. I think and even my friend who saw it, who actually really enjoyed it, we both kind of said it feels like the third act is a little bit light, like it just feels like they get to the church, they find the cross and they give it to the thing, and it just kind of ends really fast. But because it's set up, it builds up so well. It builds up really, really well, and then it kind of just ends kind of abruptly. That's literally the only thing about it, though. I still came out of there going, well, like I would just kind of put it to the side, like after seeing it like years ago, going, yeah, I've seen The Fog, it's fine. They remade it, didn't bother with the remake, but definitely one.
Remake was
to revisit.
terrible.
I never saw it.
Really,
Still
really
haven't seen
was.
it.
Like it's up there with those, like the Wicker Man and well, I used to think The Omen, but actually since the Nightmare on Elm Street and the Wicker Man came out, I kind of forgave The Omen. No, that far from the worst nowadays. But no, the Fog, like, it just totally missed the point again. It just really, and CGI fog, and because I'm not an anti-CGI person, actually, like some people tend to lash on there with just.
But it's when
terrible,
something. It's
terrible.
the thing about that is, though, it's when something is done in the original really well without CGI. You know what I mean? It's like real smoke.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
looking at
yeah.
it going, how did they direct that smoke so well?
And wasn't that? Yeah, didn't they
smoke
do
is a
scenes
really
where
good
like
actor.
the car was driving in reverse or something like that, it's supposed for the fog to chase because the wind was blowing it in one direction, so they couldn't control the fog that well.
Right.
So it was easier for them to reverse the car
Okay.
and reverse the footage than actually to
Okay.
to try and because fog you can't control it. And I'm always
Yeah.
amazed when you see those plumes as a filmmaker,
Yeah.
like. How big are the smoke machines
Yeah, yeah.
to
I know,
generate
I
that and those
know.
kind of things? It's incredible.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, definitely one to check out. Connor, anything else on your list you'd like to talk about?
I watched, just speaking of, I suppose, on the topic of watching old movies again, I watched during the week Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh, yeah.
Donald Sutherland
Yeah.
version. And I thought it was an amazing film. And I mean, not just the storytelling, but the way it's filmed. Like, it's if you're interested in camera work or style,
Yeah.
like, I just thought that film, like, I started to notice how often people were filmed through reflections or shadows,
Oh, yeah.
or you know, they had plants in every scene, just like in the frame, and
Yeah.
and it had this wonderful ability to make the normal seem sinister, which you know, suddenly, you know, a potted plant was terrifying, you
Right,
know,
okay.
and it was sort of built throughout the film, you know, and that film, it's in the original. I mean, because that's a remake as well of the original. But
There's about 4 or 5 versions.
yeah, because then Abel Ferrara did a version as
Yeah.
well,
Snatchers.
and then there's an even
The Nicole
newer one.
Kidman, didn't Nicole Kidman or something?
Yeah,
there
it
was
was
one
a couple of years
yeah,
ago.
Yeah.
Called Body Snatchers, I think.
I think it was called Invasion.
Okay.
Oh,
Something-
Invasion. Yeah,
yeah,
Body
I think-
Snatchers was the Abel Ferrara one. wasn't
Okay.
it?
Yeah.
Okay.
The kind of pink and red cover.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they do this wonderful thing where they'll follow somebody running across a road and then just move back onto our main characters.
Right.
And you don't know why, but you just have this sense of something's happening.
That there's
on
just
a
chaos breaking out
wider-
around them, like
Yeah.
in the background, like.
And again, just wonderful performances. You know, yeah, it was really scary. Like they just really, the level of paranoia that it creates, I thought
Yeah.
was great.
But isn't it like, because I just feel that the films around then, because that was 79, I think, like there was just so much more craft, and whether that was time and money, I'm not sure, put into horror films. Well, you know, I suppose science fiction horror is this one, but like you were saying, with all the shot choices and everything like that, these films are really well made. They're not
Really,
just like, you know, kind of, and there's nothing wrong with your Friday the 13th Part 6 type
yeah.
thing, but like these were, they seriously, like, you great DPs, you great actors, you great set design, everything. Beautifully made films, you know, and like Invasion Body Snatchers is willing to take its time to build up, because that creep isn't an initial thing. It just slow, and you're not even quite sure where that moment is where you start become bothered by it. You just know at the end you're really bothered. And I love that. Like,
I think that's a really good point, though. Like, I mean, they're not just horror films; they're really beautifully made films that are also horror films. And like, I think it was like Alfred Hitchcock or something like that. There's some quote from him that's always played, and it's like, "What if someone really good made a horror film?" You know. So then, like, you know, obviously he made Psycho, but then you have like Stanley Kubrick making The Shining. You know, you have Polanski making Rosemary's Baby, and like all of these, like you know.
I missed that. We're missing a
Friedkin
great
making
horror
The
film from a
Exorcist,
great
like-
director.
But I think that kind of brings us on to one of the other films I want us to talk about. That was a brilliantly made film, which was out recently, Raw.
Yeah,
So
okay, I
think
want
that
to
was
talk
a really
about this.
nicely made film. That was also a really good horror film. I
So
thought.
Conor Dowling, give us an intro.
Oh God, where to begin? Right, so Raw, it came out like in the past year. I think it's still in the cinema now.
I think it just finished yesterday.
Oh, it just
actually,
finished, okay,
Well,
right.
in Cineworld anyway.
Yeah, so it's set in France, and it's about a girl who goes to, she leaves her family to go to this veterinary college where her sister has been studying for the past year. So she goes in first year, and the college is this really weird kind of vibe of where they are like hazing all the freshmen, all the, you know, new recruits, and they, you know, they're all veterinarians, so they're like, you know, messing around with pig's blood and kidneys and organs and all this crap, and it's all very ritualistic and kind of barbaric, but they're all kind of going along with it, and she's a strict vegetarian going into it. And when she goes there, her sister has been there for the past year, and her older sister is kind of wild and crazy and having the great college experience. And then as it unfolds, we see that these two sisters, these girls, have this taste for blood and flesh, and it affects their life, and they start going like really out of control. And it's really good, but it's really well shot and amazingly acted. Like the performances in it are
the performances are great.
fantastic.
And just even what you're saying about the shot, what with the camera work, like there's a scene at the start where she's in a kind of, not like a nightclub, but like a sort of right, and it really puts you, like, it reminds me of being in a club and people bumping into you and feeling claustrophobic, and like it was totally plunged into that atmosphere.
Totally. It was this big, like, one take kind of steady cam type of shot where it's the camera's moving through from her perspective, or is it from her perspective, or just kind of?
Well, you do see her.
You do see her.
It follows
she's
her
kind of
working
dipping
her
in
way
and
through,
out, and it's like one of those kind of things where you're in the rave and there's people bumping into you, and it's all a bit too much, but it's also kind of amazing at the same time.
It reminded me of the way Spielberg puts the camera in the water in Jaws, and you
Yeah.
feel like you're
Yeah.
treading water. It was like that feeling of.
So there's a couple of kind of scenes like that, and then there's a scene later on in the film that's in another rave setup, and it's this like tracking shot that goes down through the nightclub past all these people doing all this debaucherous
Is that
stuff.
where someone's licking
Someone's
someone else's
licking
eyeball?
someone else's eyeball. Probably one of the
That's a
the
thing.
moments in the cinema where I
That's a
actually
thing.
shouted out loud, like, you know, in disgust. But then it reveals our main character at the end of the club, and she's kind of like sitting and staring at all of this stuff going on around her, and she has this really like just intense look on her face, and it reminded me a lot of the Clockwork Orange. The shot,
Even the music, actually,
the music in that
was
same thing as well.
very
Yeah, there's a
similar.
kind of harpsichordy kind of sound to it. So
The other thing about Raw as well is I know what you were mentioning about, I think, Under the Shadow, about it reminding you what horror films do well. I mean, for me, it reminded me of seeing, like it's rare a horror film now kind of sort of makes me feel a little ill.
Yeah.
Or it's,
look, Mark, we both know Conor McMahon is like the master of like gore and blood and guts.
I
and
think he
stuff.
sleeps in a pile of guts.
Yeah,
No, but-
and I have seen Connor stare wide-eyed and with a grin on his face at many gory moments in films. But in Raw, the two of us had our hands on our faces at points. looking
Really?
for our
You
See, the
fingers.
thing about it, the one thing worse than gore for me is people vomiting.
Right.
I just like that.
Yeah.
I can't look at it. It's disgusting. And
So rip them open, no problem. But if you get sick,
yeah. So that film there was a lot of vomiting in that film. But at the same time, I still appreciate a film if I come out and I'm feeling a little ill.
Because
it's
it
tough.
affected you in some way, and I think I don't normally go in for like ultra realistic gore. I like my over the top gore, like fucking Kill Bill where an arm pops off and blood sprays everywhere. I kind of like that kind of stuff as like for entertainment. But in the likes of Raw, it has this very realistic type of I wouldn't even call it gore. You know what I mean? It's bloody. It's it's that wax stuck on the leg and the skin coming off, and it's justified in the context of the story. That's the main thing. It's
I
not
feel
gratuitous.
Mark's biding his time to leave.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I can see
I'm
it.
just
There's a
trying to get
storm-
in all the
there's
good
a
stuff
storm
first.
brewing.
no,
over
it's
here.
not. It's kind of funny because I agree with so much what you're saying, and because I really like up to, I don't know whether it's halfway or not, but like up to the scene with the car at the side of the road.
Right.
Like I was sitting there watching this going like, this is, I'm uncomfortable. I'm feeling kind of, like a bit queasy. I'm thinking this is going to get really, really nasty and it's going to be really strong. And I'm a bit worried about where it's going to go and how horrible it's going to be. I just felt like and that scene with the car at the side of the road, I think was quite spectacular and interesting in its own way. I didn't feel it quite followed through as much as I want to, because that kind of set up, and I know it's kind of explained towards the end, but I was expecting that to grow from there, and it kind of pulled back, I thought. While up to that, there's this kind of steady pace of build and build and build between moments with fingers and then the car. And then just after that, there's this kind of bit of not so much happening. And I felt there would have been more connection between the two sisters, because there's kind of a bizarre sort of incestuous vibe going on as well between the sisters. There's an attraction, there's a closeness, and I don't know, I felt that was going to grow. And because the film seems so bold and so brave, I thought in a way that, say, maybe Cronenberg type films and everything would, I felt they were going to push that even further, and they didn't quite. So I was less enamored by the later part of it. I wouldn't take away from the film, I just didn't quite feel it lived up to where I thought it was going. But like, really, really great start. And I guess, see, without talking about scenes too much, like I think the gore isn't actually that disturbing. It's not that, like, the reviews talk about it as this really gory,
Right.
nasty, twisted
Yeah.
film. Like, it's not actually that gory, I don't think. Like, it's more the idea of it, and because it's well executed, you buy into it more. In the
Yeah,
same way that
yes.
Chex Chainsaw, like, there's not much violence on screen, yet it feels incredibly violent. So
Yeah.
I think that's good filmmaking more than just cheap gore. And actually, when we talk about Eyes of My Mother, I think it's the exact same thing, where people claim it's a savagely violent film, and it's not really. But no, I don't know. I'm delighted to see people loving it so much. I regret not being able to see it, because I saw it at the Horrorthon, and I kind of had wanted to catch it in the cinema here again to give it another chance. When you watch something in the context of a Horrorthon, you've
yeah.
watched a ton of films before and after. It's
Your
not necessarily,
expectations are different,
it's not
like,
necessarily
yeah.
the best way. And so I really do want to give it another chance and just kind of see, because like I may feel differently. Like, I still say it's a very good film.
Yeah.
It's just not quite, because the hype for it's been incredible. The reviews,
Really?
like, I found recently, the critics have really gone for that type of horror movie has suddenly become acceptable. In like their world, the same way Eyes of My Mother, the same way Under the Shadow, Get Out. Like, as long as horror treads a kind of somewhat, I don't know, artistic form to
yeah.
it, like,
Yeah,
therefore
yeah.
it's worthy, and then otherwise it's not. And I'm a little uncomfortable with the, just liking this one and not the other ones.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
No. Like, I delight, and anything that gets horror out there, I think is a great thing. You know, I'm very curious to see what they do next.
Yeah, I think someone was actually telling me it's based on a short film,
Yeah,
and
it
that
is actually,
short
yeah.
is
Same actress, I think.
available online for a short period of time.
Okay.
Yeah, for like maybe for the next month or something. Maybe by the time this podcast is out, it'll be gone. But yeah, for you guys anyway, if you want to check it out, I haven't seen it yet myself.
Is it called Raw or what's? Do you know what it's called?
I do not.
I
know.
don't think it is. I can't remember what it's called, but I'm sure if you search for the director's name, you'll find it under her work. But yeah, definitely worth checking out. And like, great to see films like that getting a big release, I think. Because like Raw was in mainstream cinemas. It wasn't just in an IFI or Lighthouse. And I think that's a really good thing. You know?
Absolutely. And I know the audience is like, there was like a couple beside us when we had seen the cinema, and they were just like, like freaking out.
Do you find like, because I know some people who go, because like they go kind of going, you know, there's a whole thing with a horror film, you're kind of daring yourself, like, we'll go and see it. But I feel when it comes to Raw and a few other ones, that those fans, because they're going expecting a horror film, and it's not that this isn't a horror film, because, you know, the Cronenberg films, I love, you could dismiss as being kind of more art house than horror, but I think they're going expecting kind of a bit more of an exploitation-y type film,
More
and
of
not an actual good
more
film.
of a thrill ride, more of a thrill ride, and less of an upsetting, like, cinematic, dramatic experience.
Because it's a coming-of-age drama, just with horrific,
That's it.
you know,
That's it.
implications.
And like, one of the things that I thought was really well done about it was that, however they did it, they just crafted this world where just every single thing just seemed so bleak and so dismal. Like, even just when she's standing in her room in front of the mirror, and just the room looks shitty. Like, you know, like.
Do you think like veterinary college is like that?
I
I was actually going like, is this depicting a reality that I don't know about?
Exactly.
Or,
and I'm sitting there going, if that's real, I just never want to be anywhere near any of that, because it just looks so horrible. Like.
And so from one happy film to another happy film about a woman growing up, Eyes of My Mother.
Yes.
Conor McMahon, you've seen it. Connor Dowling,
I have not seen it. I haven't heard of this, actually.
Really? So this is kind of Connor, you saw this a while ago, I think.
I saw this a while ago, so again, I can't remember a whole lot about the plot. I know the film was in black and white, and I know I really liked it. I know it was quite disturbing. Like, again, it's one of these films where the idea of it, like, you know, there's a bit where somebody chained up in the
I'll give you, so like, because I only saw it when it was on in the IFI recently, so it was a couple of weeks ago, and it already, you know, I'm not overly, it's not a strongly plot led film, I don't think. Like, basically it's a beautiful black and white film. The whole point of the film is kind of, it's built up with these sections of a child's life, and they're just stunningly framed tableaus kind of that tell this story. Very kind of static, locked off shots, beautifully composed, with very kind of harsh, contrasty black and white photography. And so it's just a daughter who's at home with her mother. A strange man turns up at the door one day asking, can he use the bathroom? The mother lets him in.
Terrifying, that scene.
Terrifying scene where, like, he basically says, where's the bathroom? And the mother says, oh, it's in there to the left. And he's like, no, but, you know, oh, where is it again? And she tells him again. He's kind of going, I want you to show me. And she's like, no, it's just there. He's like, I need you to show me. And he keeps pushing her. And, like, what's amazing with it, and so we kind of have to get into a little bit of the story to get out. So what happens is the father basically comes home and finds the daughter just kind of watching TV, and moves through the house and opens the bathroom door and finds this man chopping up his wife.
God.
And then he takes the man and brings him into a shed and chains him up, cuts his tongue out, and keeps him there. And so the girl kind of keeps him as a pet, and the film grows from there. But
so is that all like in the first act?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And see, it's not really, it's kind of weird. I've seen people describe it as kind of like almost a pre-Dexter type story, which I get, but when people hear Dexter, they kind of presume humor and lightness. It's more a realistic type thing, because there's nothing sensational about any of the stuff in the film. There's no major elaborate kind of set pieces. People say it's incredibly graphic and disturbing. It's very disturbing. It's not graphic at all. There's virtually no on-screen violence, but that doesn't mean it's any less disturbing. You know, so we see aftermaths of things. Yeah. We see a tiny bit of blood, but the intention is there. And we see how that girl changes and the choices she makes as she goes up to about being 18. And I actually just found it really incredibly wonderful, because some of these art house films can be too arty. But it really got to me. Like, it disturbed me. It was beautiful. It was powerful. I was never bored. It's only about 76 minutes, so it's not a very long film. But incredible.
I have the same feeling of it as in, definitely wasn't bored. Totally sucked me in, and it is a different, like, it's not a film I can compare it to another horror film. You know, it's certainly, not in the vein of jump scares or any of that.
Yeah, you're not going to
thing.
sit down with your mates with a few beers to watch this film. This is kind of a sit down and properly watch, and you have to kind of settle into it, but it's very rewarding for what it is. Like, it just proves how, again, just your imagination and a director, because this is a first-time director who, like, beautifully framed the whole thing, like, and made for virtually next to nothing, I think. Like, I'm pretty sure it's a he, knew the incredible power of just holding a shot.
Yeah.
And having things either happen a bit off screen or not, or even allow it's that awkward pause. Like you said, the scene where the mother and daughter is there and the stranger comes into the house before he kills her. Like, the tension is spectacular. And it's because they hold the shots. It's the lack of editing that actually makes it scarier.
Yeah.
So you would have thought that's a restrictive thing, but it's really, really not. And, you know, in a weird way, what transpires throughout the film somehow makes a bizarre kind of sense, even though it's truly horrific. But because you see it from ground zero all the way up, it kind of explains to you how someone can become so destroyed. You know what I mean? Like, and yeah, it's not judgmental. I don't think it kind of tries to say this person's bad or this person's good. It just shows this is a thing. And you kind of leave the film just kind of going, that was a thing. And, you know, it kind of haunts you. But I really, you know, I'm not sure if it's out in VOD now. It's a pity if you didn't see it in the cinema because it really was stunning on the big screen. But if you can, like, it's one of those turn off the lights, big as TV as you can, and just watch. It's I don't know, actually. I'm not sure.
Is it a foreign film?
Yes.
Nicholas Pesk. Yeah, I wouldn't even want to guess. I'm going to say Hungarian, just to be brave and bold. No.
Right.
But there's not much dialogue in it. Like,
really
there is
have to
dialogue
see
in
that.
it, but not a lot. Like, and even if you took the subtitles off it, I think you would still probably pretty much understand generally what's going on with it. But I was surprised by how much I liked it.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds awesome. Literally, like I said, I haven't heard of it, but, you know, if it's black and white, I gotta see it.
It's kind of funny because even though I can't remember the plot, there's images from that film
But that's
burnt into my
your head.
Oh, God.
And that's what I find incredible. And again, you see, it's weird because you get this kind of fear of, oh, what are these horrific images? And there are some quite startling images, but they're also incredibly beautiful. And because it's not violent, like, you have these images burnt in your head that actually, if I describe them to someone, they might say that's not that scary, and they're kind of right.
But in the context,
But like a child sitting in front of a shed with a torchlight just shining on her,
Yeah.
that is an incredible image in the film, and I will never forget it.
I think as well, it's not even just the image. I mean, for example, just even what you said, she comes home and the kid's watching TV at the same time as the mother's being chopped up.
Yeah.
It's like the kid, that image gets burnt into your head as this. And there's
and it's never explained or discussed, though. It's just that's it. Because even the father, like, he opens the bathroom door and sees this guy. We literally just see a moment of someone hacking in a bathtub. We don't really see anything, and he casually walks away. And
I think it's just that.
There's no response. And even afterwards, when he goes in and gets your man and puts him in the shed and ties him up, and, you know, I think they stitch his eyes closed in his mouth or something, isn't it? But, like, he then just goes in and watches television. And the daughter, like, makes him a sandwich or something, and no one talks about it ever.
Or
like,
it's sort of that expectation is always flipped. It's kind of like this guy in the shed, and she goes out. I could be wrong. Is there a scene where she kind of is washing him?
She takes care of him like a pet. She kind of feeds it mush and washes its hair and minds it.
Yeah. It's just those details. It's just
That's
you know,
disturbing.
like there's nothing inherently, but it's just the context and everything. It's just.
Yeah, it has to be seen. It's very, very dark. It's probably not something to watch with the parents. But I like. Don't let the black and white cinematography put you off or anything like that. If you like horror films, if you want to watch some of the more interesting ones, and like in the way that I might have mentioned, I thought Get Out wasn't as much of a horror film. Eyes of My Mother is a pure horror film, because it is truly horrific and disturbing, and in a way like an Eraserhead David Lynchian thing, even though it's not quite so dreamlike, it's so unapologetic and it feels no reason to justify itself. Yeah. It makes you feel uncomfortable, you know? Yeah. So, I definitely recommend.
What else?
Anything else? I've got two. I want to talk about The Wailing and A Dark Song. Anyone else got things?
No, I can talk about both those movies. I've seen both those movies.
Connor Dowling?
Damn it, I haven't seen
Neither.
Damn.
Quickly on The Wailing. Connor, you kind of put me onto this. You're a pretty big fan of it, I think. You saw it in the cinema, did you?
No, I saw it.
Okay, so it's actually available on Netflix now. So if people have it, watch it for free. It is a 2 hour and 36-minute film, so let's point that out. That put me off seeing it in the cinema, I have to admit.
Yeah. I mean, it's got this great thing that those. It is Korean, right?
It is Korean, yeah.
They have this wonderful ability to the tone. I mean, the tone shifts in these films, and yet somehow it kind of works, I think.
Yeah. And I actually, as a pure confession, I have not warmed to Korean cinema for that particular reason. I've struggled with films like The Host and a couple of other ones that I know people really, really love. This one I really like. For some reason, it worked. Like even the 2 hours and 36 minutes, it's all pretty good.
Yeah.
You know.
Because I think, I mean, some of the standout scenes again in my memory is like the exorcism.
Yeah, okay, actually,
scene.
Just to introduce to people, yeah. So like the Wailing is, it starts off the main character. He's a cop. He's got a daughter, a wife. That
he's kind of a bumbling kind of cop.
Yeah,
like
he's not a great guy. You know, he's having a bit
guy.
of an affair on the side, and. Yeah, there's people have been murdered. There's a couple of murders that seem strange, and they've caught the people who seem to have done the killing. They just seem to have gone insane, and that kind of carries on for about an hour of different murders and some kind of oddness, and it just kind of grows from there, and it goes from like procedural to.
I love. Do you know what I love? Sorry,
Yeah, go on.
because did they use the same word, jinn, again in this movie?
I don't know actually, but you know, it's the same principle. Like it's even though I think there's very heavy Christian. Undertones in this one,
but it's basically this idea that the ghost, it's not just, the way normally in The Exorcist or something, the ghost possessed the girl and they've got to deal with that problem. This is a ghost that moves from person to person and will literally wipe out the entire town.
Yeah,
that's kind of the idea. But they call this, it's what I find funny about it is it's in your head when you think of when they call The Exorcist and you have this nighttime, it's dark, and the guy comes up to the house and he comes out and he goes, "The Exorcist is here," or whatever. In this, it's like a guy smoking a cigarette, driving his fast car, and it's like daytime, and it's sort of like a totally other version of what an exorcism could be. And there's this ritual scene where, I mean, to me, what's one of the things about it is it feels like it could be a real ritual,
Yes.
It's quite intense. It goes on for about 15 minutes.
There's a ritual scene that's quite complex, and it's only by the end of the film that really you can kind of get some sense of what was necessarily going on in that scene. But it's it's not presented in your traditional, like, I guess, Western type movie way where we have this major thing. It is a straight up religious ritual that's cross-cut with a couple of different things, and you can draw your own conclusions about how connected that is or isn't with certain things. But I do wonder sometimes with these things, do we give it more freedom and benefit of the doubt because it's a foreign culture and we just kind of think maybe that's fine, but while when we watch, say, a Catholic exorcism film, we're kind of going, nonsense. I don't know, but it works, and it doesn't build up to any major moments. It just happens. Like there's these killings going on, and the daughter seems to have become kind of possessed, or there's something wrong with her. And they call in, she's very disturbing. And so they call in a shaman about it, but like, there's no big deal about that. The grandmother says to the main character, he's like, "Well, we're getting the shaman in," and he kind of goes, "Well, fair enough." So it's not. It's just a very different world than we're used to seeing. And there's a whole load of different levels to it. It's very much on the good and evil, and it's definitely a film that by the end of it, you're kind of going, what did I take from that, or what didn't I? Like, there's a lot of open-ended questions. I know the director said it's open to interpretation, and it was kind of only after reading a few things online, and I actually rewound through a couple of scenes to recheck what I'd seen there, that I kind of got a better handle on exactly what's happening. Like, I do think it's a little tricky to pick up on one or two things in there, and maybe for some people that's a really good thing. They like that. I do like if my film kind of wants me to understand what it's trying to say about things. But I wouldn't say it's terrifying or massively disturbing, though it is kind of creepy. Yeah. But it's very engaging. Like,
who's the director on it?
I have it written here. It is Hong Jin-na.
Okay, and what else has Han Jin-na done?
I'm not sure. I actually don't think much, though. I think this was a huge success in Korea, actually. It was one of their biggest films, I think, of all time. But it's just... it's really worth watching. Like, it's beautifully shot, like, stunningly beautiful. Like,
and
the
it
scenery.
Has scenes as well that you wouldn't just expect. This is the thing. You get almost, there's a zombie-like scene at one time.
There's zombies. There's a vampire implication. There's an exorcist type stuff. There's a load of different things in there. Yeah, the zombie kind of thing sort of comes out of nowhere, and yet everyone in the film just sort of accepts it, and so
And it
you
was a
sort of
great
go,
scene.
yeah, no,
Like, it was a brilliant scene.
it felt like it could be something out of a Conor McMahon film, to be honest with you.
That sounds great. Yeah.
But yeah, like different, and these are not like American films, so it is a different tone, a different pace. So you kind of have to just sit down, enjoy it, take your time, but you will be rewarded for it, I think.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth to watch.
Yeah. No, I've had it at home actually for a while. I've been meaning to watch it. So
Yeah, no, it is worth it. And so, last but not least, can we have a chat about our Irish entry, A Dark Song?
Dark Song, yeah.
This is Liam Gavin's first film, I believe.
Yes, I think it is. Yeah.
And this came out about a week or two from our recording in cinemas and got a pretty good release, which for an Irish film is a major achievement. Connor, do you want to do a synopsis?
Yeah, I'll give it a go. So it's basically follows this Catherine Walker's the actress, and she says she wants, basically her son has died and she wants to talk to him one more time. So she's done some research, and and she's rented this house at the start for a year, and the basic, which becomes a lot of the film, is there's these certain rituals that you can do to bring back the child. And she, what's the name of the other actor?
Steve Orm, is it? Or Steve Orm. So
From
Sightseers.
Sightseers.
Sightseers, wherever I remember, a big ginger beardy guy.
Yeah. So he's kind of the expert, that she's called in, and they have to basically lock themselves into the house for 6 months, I think.
Yeah,
So the
months.
rituals it's not just like a ritual they're going to do at the weekend or Pet Cemetery.
And it's very
kind of-
serious.
Yeah.
Like, there's no kind of like, oh, this is the thing. Yeah, he's like, you're going to be fasting. It's going to be very, very hard. It's going to be violent. It's going to be tough.
Yeah.
it makes it sound like you might actually get results out of something like that.
Well, it feels like as
you were doing a ritual
if
like
this
that.
stuff was real, how you would have to do it. Like, it's treated, and that's one thing I really loved about it, is it's treated with that sense of, this is actually how this stuff could work. It actually made me feel, I wonder how much they researched this, and is this what some people do
is
to
that
themselves?
a real, like,
You know, it just, even like the ritual drunk, because they draw all the stuff out with chalk, but there's nothing in it. Well, I don't want to get into later parts of the film, but like with all the ritual stuff they're setting up, it's all kind of in a way like meditation, fasting, chanting, focusing yourself and everything. And there's just stages you have to go through, which you would go through in any kind of religious ceremony to get to a point of, nirvana or kind of understanding of things. So in that, but it, for me, those occult symbols and stuff, it's disturbing. Like, it's creepy. And your man Steve Ormer is just wonderfully
So
like,
good.
because he's not like in horror films that you get the kind of very po-face serious thing. Like, he's kind of a slob. He's a jerk.
Yeah.
He's a pot belly guy who doesn't give a shit. He drinks. And
But I totally believe he knows.
no,
about
he does. When he
this
says he's
stuff.
seen things, you really believe it. Like, and because he talks so flippantly about it, he's like, I've done this 5 times, 3 times it happened, 2 times it didn't. There's not much we can do about it. And he's very like. He's an oaf in some ways, and then there's certain bits where he gets very serious about it.
Yeah.
And there's times throughout the film where you wonder whether he can be trusted too, and there's questions about Catherine Walker's inspirations, whether she can be trusted too, or are her motivations on it. And it's just, I don't know how, like, for me, I think it's about an 90-minute film, but like, I really got sucked into this. I really liked it.
Yeah, and it's amazing because on one sense you could go, well, that sounds like it's quite thin on plot, but actually it's the dynamic of the characters. Do you know what I mean? Their relationship and just their locked together in the room that keeps you involved. And
because they keep wondering, like, how do we know if it's working? Well, she keeps wondering, how do I know it's working? How do I know it's working? And then, like, they find like a little bit of a flower inside the house, and he's like, that's proof.
Yeah.
And you're kind of going, is it proof?
which
like,
is
maybe
a lot like what? I mean, it reminds you of what those rituals would be like in
Yeah.
real life, or, kind of religious type stuff. It's like, there's rarely
something
visible
exactly,
relevance.
and so it's how, because like he says it with complete belief of, now we know that it's happening, like, and it's like, even at the beginning he surrounds the whole house with salt, and it's her last chance to walk out, and you cannot break that barrier. And it's weird because you buy it, like, I really believed you. You're kind of going, no, you can't be crossing that line. It's a funny one. Like, I've been saddened to see some of the online community kind of taken against it. I guess it is a slower film in some ways, though I found it like so engaging and I really, really enjoyed it. Beautifully shot, Jesus. But like, I don't know whether it's the modern audience are going in looking for something slightly different. I think as well, some of the advertising campaign compared it with Hellraiser meets The Descent, and I think that's a
The
mistake.
Descent.
Yeah, I saw that it was.
Yeah,
How is it?
it's
anything to do with
not.
the same?
It's really not, and I think that's. Can you see, Connor, how they?
don't see any. Like,
No.
The Descent is about
People going down into caves.
Yeah,
underground.
and creepy monster creatures
Yeah.
jumping out at you, and it's
No.
very frightening and
I
quite
was like-
violent.
I
I
was
mean,
like,
if you wanted to compare it to horror films, there's plenty of other horror
Yeah.
films you
Yeah,
could have chose to
it
compare
just-
it to.
You know, marketing, like, I guess I think that would pull in some people, but the problem is I feel it was really unfair to the film because they were going in looking for a different film, and this is a really good film, but it's not that film.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that might have done it a bit of a disservice that way because, you know, it may have pulled in the wrong crowd for it. Because I think what Liam did with this film is just, I just think it's great. It's a grown up film about loss and grief. It's about rituals and everything like that. It's very it's such a wonderfully controlled hand. Like, this guy directed this film with pure confidence. It feels like that watching it. It doesn't feel like there's a doubt in his mind about where he wants to take it.
Yeah,
and I love that about it. You know, and even he follows that right through to the conclusion. And I have one or two bits I may not be, you know, I might question towards the end, or actually more just effects that I might not have thought worked quite as well. But like, I love the fact that it was such a confident film, especially for a debut feature. Like, like, you know, I really, and I hope he does more in the horror world as well. You know, and I've seen people question whether this is a horror film, and that kills me because I'm kind of going, it's a cult, it's a ritual, you're trying to resurrect the devil. Yeah, no, I really, really thought it was good. I presume it'll be out pretty quickly on video on demand and stuff. The windows of these things are shorter nowadays. Be interesting to see how it works on a smaller screen. But yeah, for me, like, Connor, did it hold your attention?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I suppose if anything, and I suppose we've avoided talking about the last section of the movie.
Yeah.
It's
hard because I'd love to.
I
and
really
then
want to see it, by the way.
Yeah.
Because,
but again, it's kind of like do you know? I like a film that puts you in a world you haven't been in before.
Yes.
Or you're kind
you
of
feel like you're getting a
unfamiliar with.
window to a world that you don't know about.
Yeah. And that's kind of and a world you feel is believable. Like, you can totally buy into the reality of it.
Yeah.
So,
Great performances.
Like, those two, like,
They hold the whole film.
Really, yeah. Without that, you know, I mean, that's what you need for a film like that to work. And it was what I wasn't expecting, because I was going, I wonder, will the horror sustain me, or the fact that will I be, you know, but actually it's those two characters, and it's just like, and your man's a little bit creepy, and it's kind of like, you know,
It's kind of
what's going
sleazy
on?
as well. Like,
Yeah.
it's that uncomfortable. Like, she's locking herself in this house with this guy who she doesn't know from Adam, who seems like a very unreliable person.
Like, in the scene, do you remember the way at the start he goes, we're going to have to sleep together at the start? And
Yes.
then there was that scene because I might have missed a line or two, but was he just making that up, or was that the implication?
The scene that happens, he just did that for his own gratification,
Okay,
which is
yeah.
equally disturbing and horrifying.
Because she's locked in there.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Because sorry, we're talking around stuff not to book on our Dowling out, but like, yeah, no, there's see, that's what I like, is that both of these people have their own, they're fully formed characters. They're both their own people, and so it's not just the horror of the rituals and what may or may not happen when they complete it. It's also how people treat each other, how people take care of themselves. Like, all those bits are equally disturbing, and so you don't trust the people almost as much as you don't trust the magic. You know what I mean? And I like that, because, you know, too often we have just, it's good people who are in the middle of this kind of magical madness. Like, you know, these are all damaged people in a very dangerous situation, and it would be good enough reason for me not to want to play around with this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I like, for me,
I'll stop playing around.
Connor just puts away the Ouija board. But no, like, you know, it just, again, not just because it's an Irish film, but, you know, we should be supporting Irish films, but it's a really good film. If this was an Irish film, I would be really strongly supporting this. It's one of the ones that I will be buying to put on my shelf, and I don't buy a lot of modern horror films because I just don't think they're ones I would really like to rewatch again. I think this is a great mate. No, it finished about 2 weeks ago, I think.
I think it was in the cinema.
No, it was in cinema until, it was.
Because
Really?
I kept trying to go
I
see
saw
it,
it
but I
last
had
week.
stuff on. Yeah, it was definitely on
Okay,
the cinema
maybe last
over
week.
the past week, but I'm wondering, can I get a chance to see it over the next
Well,
week?
keep
So
an eye
it's
out. Maybe it
hopefully-
is. Maybe it's held on some
It had
places.
one. It had once for the past week. It had one screening at 9:00 in Cineworld. So I don't know if that means that's the last week or what. But
I'm feeling it
hopefully-
might, but yeah, like, it's just because of the type of film it is. Well, like,
Yeah.
I think there is actually an audience out there who would love to see that film. I think it's very hard to reach those audiences these days and try and inform the right people. You know, and I guess the marketing people went for whoever they thought they could get in, but I think that film was good enough to sustain a larger audience than maybe it got. So it's not a mark on the film. It's just, it's so hard to get a film that people are aware of a film nowadays. So hopefully it will get the attention it deserves when it comes out on the other platforms.
Just a film to mention briefly, because I did go see The Handmaiden. Now,
Oh yeah, any good?
Not a horror. I really enjoyed it. I really liked
This is
it.
Park Chan-wook.
Yeah. It's like, that's his name. I always think of Chewbacca and Jackie Chan walking through a
So
park.
am I right? This is
That's
director of The Host and Stoker. Am I right?
Old Boy.
Exactly.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
of course, yeah.
So I mean, the reason I bring it up is because I recently watched Thirst, which was
Oh
his
yeah, I still
other
haven't seen
film.
that either.
Still
Actually,
haven't seen that, yeah.
And that's well worth a watch. It does have there's a massive tone shift in that film as well, where it goes from being quite serious to being really kind of comic and over the top. But it's again a film full. This is Thirst now, full of interesting ideas. Probably doesn't all add up. Like, I wouldn't say I'm mad on the film, but there's so many great scenes. Like, it's kind of a vampire film. I mean, there's brilliant little stuff like he's just turned his wardrobe on his side, and that's kind of his coffin. It's like lying on the floor, and he just kind of gets out of it.
I like
a
that.
wardrobe. Or there's a scene where he's trying to, like somebody dies, he's trying to give them blood, but every time he like cuts his wrist, it just heals back again. And so he's like cutting them and it's healing back quicker than he can give them the blood. And it also has a scene which I think, you know, those scenes in Superman where he flies around with Lois Lane, and there's a scene where he kind of he's basically, when he realizes he's a vampire and he has the girl and he's jumping around the city because he can kind of fly, and they sort of put the camera on him. It's like they're bounding around and you really feel that rush of adrenaline that you must feel jumping around the city. In a way that I've never felt in a Superman movie.
Oh, I have to go and see it.
So
I'd say that's one of those ones that probably in the cinema is going to work better than.
well, now this is Thirst. Sorry.
Sorry, Thirst you're thinking. Sorry.
I'm talking about Thirst.
Yeah.
Handmaiden isn't a vampire film. It's not. I wouldn't say it's a horror film. It's got moments of horror. So I mean, Thirst is an earlier film that he did, but definitely worth a watch. Like, it's got. I mean, for a vampire film, it's got a lot of interesting scenes, I would say, in itself, but maybe altogether it's a little bit of a mishmash. But definitely Handmaiden is worth going to see.
Okay, I'll put it on the list.
Not
Actually,
quite a horror at
Yeah.
all, but again, it's one of his most complete films, I would say.
Okay, because I've liked some of, like, Oh Boy, I adore,
Yeah.
not all the other stuff. And actually, just then quickly on that as well, because on Shudder exclusively they released on Thursday We Are the Flesh, which is a very controversial horror film that was out in, I think, Mexican American maybe, horror film. You know, I would say watch it. Again, it's kind of on that hard house vibe. I don't know whether you'd say it's pure horror or not. It definitely pushes the bounds of, it's about sexuality. There's incest issues. There's some violence. It's kind of weird. It's just kind of a brother and sister stumble upon this homeless guy in a house, and he's kind of building this giant structure, which turns out to be kind of like a new womb. And it kind of goes into this bizarre world.
I feel like I've heard of that movie.
Yeah, no,
before.
it got a lot of controversy. And I'm actually, you know what? I don't think it's actually that brilliant a film. It's very boundary pushing. I think probably when I was younger, I probably would have been more impressed by it simply because it was so controversial. Mm-hmm. I don't know that it really earns what it's doing in it. But when I looked it up on the BBFC, this film got passed with no cuts. And I find that quite incredible because when I think about what films were, how censored they were when we started off watching, to nowadays, like, this involves, like, you know, a brother and sister and a graphic shot of her going down on her brother, like, not cut. I'm not saying the film warrants that or that's a particularly good or intelligent scene to have in a film, but I do think there's something wonderful about that censorship has come so far that there's a tolerance on an artistic level, because this, you know, it's an art house film, so if you're going in just looking for sensation stuff, you're going to be bored to tears with it as well. It's not like it's, you know...
it is interesting on that note as well. I don't know if it was just released recently or it's been around a while, but only last week I saw there was footage of Sam Raimi when he released Evil Dead.
Oh, I haven't seen that, him justifying it.
Yeah,
is it good?
And it's just really interesting to, you know, it's like, again, it's a different time, and even, I mean, you can tell Raimi is even going...
Yeah,
you know,
I can't justify that.
Or, well, he's kind of going 10 years before people were giving out about other horror movies.
Yeah.
He kind of is aware that it's a cyclical thing. Every generation is going to be giving about the next thing. And I think he's almost smiling to himself at the absurdity.
I think I heard somewhere that he was, when it came down to it, he was kind of like some of the things in it, I suppose I can't necessarily say.
The tree rape in Evil
there's
Dead is
anything-
problematic.
I just think you probably wouldn't do,
Yeah.
do that again, you know.
But I think it's like it sounds
But there's
stupid.
footage of it. I haven't seen the footage.
It's
I'd like
just
to see
like, I think when you're younger, like, you're going for it. You
Yeah.
kind of think, why not? And I think it's unfair to just kind of,
You never think it's going to be held up against you in the cold light of day and go,
Yeah.
why did you do
But, like,
this
no,
exactly?
I don't think he sat down and thought, like, I'm going to really upset. I think he just thought, what's the grossest, most twisted
Yeah.
thing I could put in there, and he did.
that
and,
I've never seen before.
Yeah.
But I do find it interesting. People, I mean, if you're into horror, you make horror. It does come up where you're kind of looked at, like, it's kind of people kind of question, like, why are you into horror? And it's like, nobody ever kind of goes, like, well, maybe they do, but like, why into religion? Or
No,
I know. Other things.
it's not appropriate to question other people because, like, like if you want to, like, religion on that way is a perfect example because, like, you're kind of going, there's so many things that you just totally accepted and that's no problem.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to say, I respect that. And yet the fact that you're interested in even, because art and horror for me is exploring these ideas. That's what all these things are. And so the idea, because we're not saying these things are real, you are.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny. But even like people don't ask, why are you into comedy? They don't
Yeah,
ask, why are you
yeah.
into dramas? Why are you into this? Like, why are you into football? It's
But
just
it's
two
also-
guys kicking a ball left and right. Like, it's just...
And it's not even what they're into. It's like they try to draw a direct result between being into horror and violence in society. And I suppose
Yes.
that's why I bring up religion, because that's one of the things, there's so clearly a link, and yet it's not something... Do you know what I mean? It's kind of...
It takes no responsibility for it, and
like,
horror
they'd
films
sooner
get
have a
done.
debate on telly about people who make horror films.
Yeah.
Like, there's
Yeah.
something like... you
Well,
know-
and that's the thing, actually, because, like, say, We Are the Flesh, like, because, there's a few films recently that kind of touched on the whole incest thing. I think it's probably, again, as you said, horror is cyclical, and as different boundaries are pushed, there's few remaining taboos that people are trying to push, and nowadays maybe you can get through it a bit more in cinema. But, like, I think... These things, when like anything that's in a horror movie, no matter how disturbing or how realistic, these are things that happen in the world. These weren't invented by movies. And the idea of blaming a movie for addressing something that happens in the world, you may not want to watch it, and it's absolutely fine not to watch it. You may watch it and be disgusted. That's also perfectly acceptable. But I resent the idea that because it's in a horror film, that horror films are to blame.
Yeah.
No one created anything new. This is stuff that's been in our culture, whether it's fairy tales, whether it's reality. It's all part of the world. And to blame the genre itself that reflects it back at you, it's like smashing the mirror because you don't like the reflection.
People talk about like violence in video games being the cause of violence in the real world, and I think the kind of trump card for that people always use is, what were the names of the violent video games that Hitler used to play?
Yeah.
And it's like, there's, like you say, like, I mean, the horror movies aren't creating these horrific things; they're exploring them.
Yeah, and I
it's
actually
part of
think-
a primal thing that we need to see happen and to explore and to feel those things from a safe place that's in our armchair at home or in the cinema surrounded by a group of other people who are also going to experience that thing as well. So it is a totally natural thing. But I think nowadays, like, are people still like blaming horror movies for atrocious things, or is that all left behind in the 80s? Like,
No, I think it comes up whenever there's like the 80s, but the 90s was the Child's Play things with Jamie Bulger.
Right, right.
No, it still comes up. Saw definitely got like a whole of the torture porn thing got a whole lot of flack.
Those
Like,
movies are intense. Like those movies are.
They
like,
are.
compared to the stuff that was like. Remember Video Nasties? Like,
Yeah.
that was the 80s, right?
Absolutely.
There's like 200, 300 films that were like outlawed, and if you were caught,
it was
renting
76,
them
I
out-
think. It was
yeah, there was
yeah.
some specific number. Evil Dead was on that list,
Yeah.
but so were a lot of other things that we've probably seen. Most of us have seen.
Oh,
on
they're
those
all like uncut now, yeah. But like
Yeah.
the torture porn came out though just after the Iraq War with the incredible violence in Afghanistan, actually probably more so. So like and 9/11. So like these things were responses. Like people went to see very violent films in the cinema because there was an incredible amount of violence and there was a weird need to let out these things. It's the same way these things have always gone in that way. The same way the 1950s kind of sci-fi films of the giant nuclear creatures was with the whole fear of
Their
the
response to
Soviets.
what's
Like
happening.
it's so it not to justify those films, and again not to say that those films had a lot of merit. I'm not a massive fan of actually I like the Saw ones, but like I
up to about 3, I thought.
I kind of was with it to 6. But no, but it just like I do think they still get demonized. I still think they get blamed for things.
I mean, I think the slight issue now is because of, even just watching that thing back in with Sam Raimi, it's like the big issue was, kids getting their hands on it. And I suppose the thing is that's been just blown wide open now. It's like they can get their hands on much worse stuff that isn't
stuff
even
that's
necessarily
real.
horror.
Stuff that's
you know what I mean?
real.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
like,
Exactly,
they can get the stuff on videos that.
That's it. People are watching people getting really beheaded on the internet, and like for me, no horror film's ever going to compete with that. But the only thing I felt sad the other day, because I was thinking about that, was, and I know we got to wrap this up in a minute, was that because of streaming and everything, you can like at least on Netflix or on iTunes, you do get to see the poster at least, kind of. It gives you some sense. But as a kid going into a video store, it was that big circle with red and 18 written in the middle that meant I want to watch that film. So like you look at all these different covers and then you looked at the rating and you went, oh, that must be a good one.
And
they don't get that anymore.
The artwork on those old horror movie VHSs was just,
but there's
like,
no
I
buzz
have
on
to
that
see
because people
movie.
can kind of watch anything. Like even like there's no sort of rating section or anything on ratings. And like I know that sounds terrible, but that was part of the desire, because like if it's 18s, then it's got to be real good. And they do have the ratings there. It's written, but it just doesn't have that kind of imposing doom. You know, that red was real serious.
Over at the 18s. So I know.
But so like that's a sad thing that people get to miss out on. But yeah, I think that was a pretty good wrap up on a whole load of films.
Cool, yeah.
Cool.
So hopefully we will be back sooner rather than later.
Absolutely,
and we'll get back to our regular programming. And thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks for listening, guys.